Hello my friends, welcome back to Bazen Graphics. What you are seeing right now is a simple and best car that we shall be creating at the end of this video. But before we create it, there are some transitions I wanted to teach you, or the transitions that I've learned, and I'm sure they'll be helpful to you. So let's begin. So this is our interface of Blender. So right now let's begin by creating a cube. The shortcut, remember, is Shift plus A, letter A, and it will bring for you these options, and you select cube. So our cube has been created, as you can see. So the transitions that I wanted to teach you, remember, when you want to move, for example, this object here on the X and the Y axis, we shall go to the options here on the left top of Blender, and if we drag, we shall see the move option here. So when you select it, we can move the object along the X axis, and we can also move the object along the Y or the Z axis. You understand? So what I wanted to teach you is I would want to move this object without me going to these cursor options here, these left options, because it can be sometimes tiring if you have a lot of objects on your scene or in Blender. So what we shall do, we are going to be using what we call shortcuts on our keyboard. So for example, if I select this object and I press G, letter G on my keyboard, I will move this object to wherever I want on my scene here. As you can see, I can move it along the Y axis, I can move it along the X axis, I can move it along the Z axis. So if I have moved it and I'm like, yes, I want it to stay on this position, I will left click on my mouse. So when I left click on my mouse, it will stay in that position where I want it. But let's undo. If I undo, they will put it back. But if I press again letter G on the keyboard and I move it, and I be like, I do not want it there, I'll click on the right of my mouse. I'll right click on my mouse and I say I don't want it, I want it back to its original position. So hope you have understood. Left click is saying, yeah, this is where I need it. Right click is saying, no, I don't need it there, I want it back where it was. So I've realized in this Blender, things are kind of opposite. You may think right is supposed to be the right way, but they're saying no, it's not the right way. We need it back to where it was supposed to be. So if I click on it, I press G and I move it anywhere, and I be like, yes, I need it there, I left click. So when we left click, you can see they have left it there. So let me undo, and it goes back to our position. Now, if I want to move it along the X axis only, for example, I will press G, letter G on my keyboard, and then press again X. You don't have to long press, you just press G and X. And as you can see, they can only move it along the X axis. We can only move it along the X axis. So let's put it back to its position. If I want it, move it on the Y axis, G, then I press again letter Y, and I can move it on the Y axis. And I can still press again letter Z, and it can move on the Z axis, or letter X, and I can move it on the X axis. You understand? This one will help you a lot. Instead of going back to the other positions, the other options to click, then you come and shift again. So let's right click, put it back in its position. So if I want to move it according to numbers, if I want to specifically move it, let's say 1 meter along the Y axis using the shortcut. So what I would do, I will select it, I press G, you understand? And then after pressing G, I say we want to move it along the Y axis, and then I press Y. And then after, I want to move it 1 meter on the Y axis. Then I'll press 1. As you can see, it has been moved to the Y axis according to at a distance of 1 meter. So I want to do it also for the X axis. I'll just select it, press letter G, x-axis, let's say 2 meters, and they'll move it to the positive 2 meters. If you want to move it to the negative, you press still letter G, x negative 2, and they'll move it to the negative side on the x-axis. Hope you people are understanding what I am really showing or showcasing here, because it's very important. It's very important. So let's click on the left, let's click on the right to put it back to our position. So let me give you a scenario. For example, right now, if we create another, let's create a plane. Let's create a plane, shift plus A, and they go to mesh, and we're like, we need a plane. So this plane, this is the plane that we are going to be using. So let's first expand it. So that we can have a plane on which to show. Okay. All right. Now, this position here, this one here, our cube, we are going to push it up so that it can be at the same distance. Down here, most of the time, these cubes are created at 2 meters. The downer part is 1 meter. The upper part is also 1 meter. So we are going to move it along the z-axis 1 meter above so that it can be at the same plane with our plane. So what we're going to do is we are going to select our cube, and we are going to press G. Then we are going to click on letter Z or Z, and we're going to say, we are going to add also 1. We're going to click on number 1. So this is where we want it, and we're going to left click. So Z or Z plus, no, G plus Z plus 1. Hope you have understood. So as you can see, our cube is on top of our plane. So now, if we want to move it around here like this, we are going to say we don't want it to move up along the z-axis. We want it to move along the x and the y-axis. So we can move it on top of our plane, along, I can say along or on top of our plane without it going up on the z-axis. So what we are going to do is we are going to select it, and we are going to press G, and we are going to press again Shift Z. So when we press Shift Z, it's only moving along the X and Y axis. So if you want to eliminate one of the axes or the axes, you have to press Shift plus that axis you want to eliminate. So for example, here we didn't want it to go to the Z axis, so we are going to press G, letter G, then we press or we click on Shift plus Z. You understand? Because we don't want it to move along the Z axis. So the axis that you don't want your object to move along, is the one you click on. But remember, you have to accompany it with the shift button. You understand? If you don't want it to move along the x-axis, if you don't want it to move along the x-axis, you press or you will click J. You will click. If you don't want it to move along the x-axis, you will click on G, then Shift x-axis. So it will only move on the y and the z axis. Hope you understand. I'm trying to explain these things in my own way. So this is where I want it. I'm going to left click. So I've left clicked, and now that's where it is. So remember to select all of them is letter A. Let's first delete them by using X on our keyboard, and we shall delete it. So let's create another cube. This also works for scaling. The other one was movement. We're using letter G. Here scaling we use letter S on our keyboard. If you click it, you can see that I'm expanding it along the X, Z, and Y axes or axes. Yeah, as you can see, letter S on the keyboard. So if I want it to scale to that point, and this is where I want it to be, I will left click, and that is where it will be. You understand? So if we want to scale it along the only the x-axis, we shall press or we shall click letter S on our keyboard, and we shall click again letter X on our keyboard. So as you can see, we are expanding it along the x-axis. If we want to expand it along the y-axis, we press Y, and we can see they are expanding it along the y-axis. If we want to expand it along the z-axis, we are going to press Z on our keyboard, and we can see that we are scaling it along the z-axis. Yep. So if we want it, if we like it the way it is here, we left click on our mouse, and we can see that this is where it has stopped. So it also works for scale. Yeah, scale. So now here, if we want to only have it scale along the x-axis and the z-axis, and we want to eliminate the y-axis, what we do, we are going to click on S on our keyboard, letter S on our keyboard, and we shall click Shift Y, because we want to eliminate the y-axis. Shift Y, and as we expand, as you can see, it's expanding along the x and the z-axis, not the y-axis. So here this one can help you to build a wall. So if I want it in that position, I will left click. If I want it in my original position, I'll right click and to go back to this position. You understand? And then another one we have to learn is rotation. Let me first delete this, and let's create another cube. And here is the cube. And if we want to rotate, remember on these options, you just have to come and select this rotation option on the left top of Blender. But remember, we are using what we call shortcuts. Hotkeys, those things. So if we want to rotate, we use letter R. So if I click on R, as you can see, we are rotating our cube along the Z, X, Y axes. You understand? So if I want it there, I'll click left. If I don't want it, right, and it goes back to the position. If I want to rotate it along the x-axis, it's the same thing. Select it, click on letter R, and click again X, and they will rotate it along the x-axis. Y, I press letter Y, we shall rotate it along the y-axis, and Z, we press letter Z, and we shall rotate it along the z-axis. If my original position, right click, they put me back to original position. And we should remember, when it comes to rotation, the objects rotate along the, what we call the, let's first remove this cursor here, along the pivot point, or along the anchor point, what we call anchor point, sometimes in different softwares, pivot point. So when I expand it, that yellow thing that you see in the middle, that is what we call the pivot or the anchor point. For example, if I'm to rotate it, let me first zoom it out. If I'm to rotate it, let's say along the x-axis, letter R plus x-axis, you can see that the rotation is happening along the anchor point, as you can see in the middle there. You understand? So this anchor point is the origin, or where these objects originate from. For example, if I scale to 0, you can see that the scaling goes to the anchor point, and if we are to expand, as you can see that the object is expanding from the anchor point or the pivot point. So the objects originate from this anchor point. This is very important, especially if you're doing scaling, and also if you're using text, or also when you want to let's say fix objects from the same position. Let's say if you want an object to originate from or animate from the corner of the house, that's where you put the anchor point or the pivot point for you to for the object to appear from or to begin from there. So to explain it in a more detail, let's first view from top. Let's first view from top, and let's first view from top. Remember, top, you have to use the tilde button. It's like a wave, TILDE, DE, TILDE. It's like a wave, a water wave. You click on it, and they will bring for you these options of choosing top, left, back, and front. So this is why we are viewing it from the top. So as you can see from the top, the anchor point is in between our object here. It's in between our object here. So in the object mode, in the object mode, we can, when we move our object, left and right, let's click on G, letter G. If we move it around here, we see that the object is moving with our anchor point. That's the object mode. You understand? But if we are in the edit mode, because there are different modes which you have to learn. If we are in the edit mode, if we want to edit components, different components on the different components on our objects, on the left top of our Blender, there are options you can choose. There is the edit mode, there is the sculpt mode, the vertex paint, the weight paint, and texture paint. So if we go to the edit mode, where it helps us to edit every component on the object, if I press G on my keyboard and try to move it around, you can see now the anchor point is at what? The anchor point is left. So the object is moving independent of the anchor point. So this is where the edit mode comes in. Shortcut of the edit mode is using tab on your keyboard, tab, and you go to the edit mode. So to explain more about the edit mode, let me first put it back here. If we go, let's say, to 3D view in the edit mode, as you can see, it's showing all the edges, but if we press tab, you can see that it goes back to the whole object. Now this one, we are seeing the whole object. If we press again tab on our keyboard, it takes back to our edit mode. So edit mode, what do I mean? I can edit components, independent components on this object or cube. For example, if I select this vertex and I select the option of move, it means I can move it independent of the other. So this one will help me create different shapes. Or I can select two vertices using this. I can select two vertices and I can move them independent of the others. So it helps me to create different shapes, which I can't do in the object mode. That's what you must understand. You can't do this in the object mode. So this one is very important because it will help us create our car. Remember, it will help us create our own car. So that's what we call the edit mode. So in the edit mode, remember, if we can go back in the edit mode, remember, I can move my anchor point. So right now, it's not that necessary for you to learn right now. You'll be learning it in the other videos. But for us to create another car, to create our car, I wanted to show you the edit mode so that you can understand it. Better, because it helps us to edit our different components. You understand? So if we have to select the whole of it and we move it around, we can move the anchor point to, let's say, like at the edge here, and I say this is where I want it. And if we go back to our object mode by pressing tab to see, we will see that our anchor point is at the side, at the edge here, at the edge at the edge or at the side of our object. If we want to put it in the corner, we can still move it to go back to the tab, and we can view our from the left, and we can still move our object to around here. And if we go back to the object mode, as you can see, the anchor point has been put at the corner of our object. You understand? So if I'm to rotate, for example, to rotate around the anchor point of where it is at the corner. So you see, it's very important. It's very important for you to learn this anchor point. I think I'll create a small video where I explain it. I do it again so that you can understand it. This video may be long. I may have put a lot of things, but you have to understand the anchor point. You understand? So if you are to scale also, it will be scaling from the anchor point. You understand? Yep. So if you want to put back the anchor point in the center, you just come and select your object. Remember, it should be in object mode. And if you right click and you got set origin, you got origin to center of the mass. As you can see now, our anchor point has been put in the center of our cube again. So now this one was part one. The next part, we shall be creating our own car. It will be very simple. If you have watched this and if you haven't learned anything, please repeat the video and repeat, because repetition is perfection, and you will learn more about this before we create our car. So this is part one. In part two, we shall be creating our simple and basic car. Thanks for watching.